Hello and welcome to this Corgi Engine tutorial. I'm Renaud and today I'm gonna talk to you about weapons in the Corgi Engine. The Corgi Engine includes a generic weapon system, allowing your characters to equip a weapon, projectile-based, melee, whatever you can think of, and switch to another one. Like here, I can switch to a rocket launcher, and of course use it. Alright. The engine also includes a few examples of weapon that you can look at. There are, well, these two that I just showed, but there are others. There are enemy weapons, there are melee weapons. So you can have and use all of these as a basis for creating your own. So to be able to use a weapon, a character must have a certain ability. So I'm gonna drag the rectangle prefab into the scene so you can see what I mean. In its inspector you can see it has a Corgi controller, character script, a lot of abilities that allow it to dash, run and stuff. I suggest you have a look at the dedicated tutorials to learn more about character classes and character abilities. The one that will be of interest to us today is the character handle weapon script. That's the script your character needs to have if you want it to be able to shoot a weapon. That's the script that will be the interface between your input manager saying I pressed, for example, the right hand trigger from my gamepad, and that's how it will press the actual trigger on the gun. So what do we have in its inspector? You have the fact that the ability is permitted or not. As on all the other abilities, you can turn that on or off from any other script. Maybe because until some point, until your character has learned how to shoot a gun, you cannot do that. You can set an initial weapon, so you can drag and drop simply, for example, the minimal machine gun into that slot, and if you press play you'll see that, well, I have to because I dragged one in the scene, but yeah, I can kill myself apparently, but yeah, I now have a minimal machine gun. So that's the weapon I start with, and you can also set weapon attachment. The weapon attachment is some sort of reference at which your weapon will be attached. It's much easier demonstrated than explained, so I'll just do this. I have a game object here. I'm gonna, as you can see, I've created an empty game object. I'm gonna call it attachment. I'm gonna place it at 0, 0, 0. So here it is, and let's say I want it here for some reason. So I'm gonna press apply, and I'm gonna get my minimal machine gun as my initial weapon, and I'm gonna drag my attachment here into weapon attachment. And if I press play, you'll see that my weapon is now attached, but at the specific place I specified. And if I shoot, it works. Can be useful if you have like arms that are moving. There's an example of that in the hunt scene. Maybe I can show you that. It's quite interesting. I'm gonna remove that guy, and I'm gonna drag the soldier red into the scene. So this one, as you can see, comes with a soldier machine gun. That's a new weapon. And it's attached to a weapon attachment that is actually much better seen in 3D. So we've got this really low poly guy, and he's got some IK setup. So if I move my gun up and down, you see that the arm, well, actually I'm gonna change something here so that I can control my gun using the other trigger, so I don't have to move. And I'll go into details over that, but secondary movement here. So if we look at the scene view, now I'm controlling my gun using my right hand stick, and as you can see, when I move my gun, it's moving my arm, moving my head, and that's done using really basic UI IK in Unity. So that's one of the uses of the weapon attachment. Now if I go back to my handle weapon, I can also say that this character can or cannot pick up weapons and set up some ability sounds when it starts using a weapon and so on, but usually you want to set the sounds directly on each weapon. You generate, don't start making a sound when you start shooting with a gun. The gun makes the sound. So all weapons in the Corgi engine derive from the weapon class. You can of course divert from that, you can create your own weapons from scratch, but that's how all the examples in the engine right now work. The weapon class is meant to be extended, and it will define a lot of things common to all or most weapons. Using it as a basis, you'll be able to create everything from a shotgun to a rocket launcher, but also a katana or a grappling gun. In addition to providing a solid basis for animations, sounds, state management, it allows you to define in your child class what happens when the weapon is used and build from there. You can look at the projectile weapon and melee weapons classes, for example, on how you create different weapons from this very same script. So let's have a look at all that. For example, if I open the projectile weapon here, you'll see that it derives from weapon, and if I go into weapon, this is the base script. This is what is common to all weapons in the game. Of course, I won't go into all the details, it does quite a lot of stuff, but the main takeaways are the weapon states. It's a state machine. If you're not familiar with the concept, it's a design pattern that will allow you to store a current state for an object, and among all these states, idle, start, delay before use, and so on, and it will also remember what state it was in the previous frame. So we have that, we have a bunch of delays. You can define also trigger modes. So semi-auto, you'll have to press the trigger every time you want to shoot, and auto, you've got something like a machine gun and it will shoot repeatedly and periodically. You can have delay before uses. You have also the possibility to set a time between uses, so especially useful for auto guns but also semi-auto. You can define the position of the weapon based on the weapon attachment that we've seen before. You can decide whether or not you want your weapon to flip when the character flips, and when it flips you can set how it flips. Usually you'll only flip the x-axis, but why not? You can flip in other ways. There's a particle effect that you want to trigger when the weapon is used, for example flames when shooting a machine gun. There are a bunch of animation parameters named. You'll see that, and what's important here is that you want to set the name of the parameter. So for example, if you for your machine gun you want your character to bob his head, you can have an animation saying or called character bobbing his head, but maybe the animation parameter will be machine gun running, machine gun firing, and that's something you'll put into use animation parameter, for example. Just have a look at the examples in the scene. They're really good examples of how to set that up. Then we have the sounds. You can set sounds when the gun or the weapon starts shooting or being used, when it's used, when it stops, when it reloads, and you can define hand positions. So that's for IK stuff. That's how it's set up. What else? These are like internal stuff. And then a weapon will have an owner, usually the person wearing the gun. and that way you can define whether or not the weapon can harm the user, and it will be able to disable a projectile collision while it's traveling through the shooter. Then you can turn the weapon on and off, and then we have the whole life cycle of the weapon here, and you can define how it works. Basically that's it. If we go into a projectile weapon, you'll see that we override, as we extend weapon, we override a certain number of methods. We override weapon use, and when we use the weapon, we will do whatever weapon is doing as a base class, and then we determine a spawn position and we spawn a projectile, and that's all there is to it. So let's say you were to create a flamethrower. You'd do basically the same thing, but instead of spawning a projectile, you'd say throw flames, because that's what flamethrowers do. So to create your own weapon, you can either reuse the projectile weapon or melee weapon scripts as they are, extend them, or create your own weapon child class. In any case, you'll then need to create a weapon prefab. So what we're going to do today is create a weapon one, a melee weapon. I'm going to call it tutorial melee weapon. And so that we can see it, I'm gonna add it, that kind of tag. I'm gonna select it and move it around. Alright, so I've got my melee weapon. When you create a weapon, you have a choice to create a visible weapon or an invisible one. For example, the machine gun for the rectangle that I was using just earlier on was visible. You could see it rotate and so on, but if you look at the and I'm gonna drag one into the scene so you can see what I mean. If you take prefab here, AI Blue Robot, this one has a weapon but it's invisible because the animation was sufficient, and when it's shooting it doesn't really need a weapon. So that's for invisible ones. So today we're gonna create a visible one. So what we're gonna do is add a sprite render to our object. So far it's empty. I'm gonna set its sorting layer to player because we're gonna set it on the player, and let's just find something that we could use as a weapon. You know what, this will do. It looks like some sort of I'm not exactly sure what this is, but could be a plasma gun or something if you get a lot of imagination. We'll reduce its scale, and here we go. Let's drag let's drag a rectangle in the scene, and let's imagine that we have our melee weapon on top of it. It's still a bit too big. I'm gonna reduce its size to 0.2. So here we go. Alright, I've got a sprite render. Now I'm gonna add a melee weapon on top of it. So here it is. So what can I say? We have you can set a few things. First of all, we'll set the trigger mode to semi-auto, so that way we'll have to press the button, the attack button, every time we want to trigger the melee weapon. We can set its damage area shape to rectangle or circle, and here we can see the area. We can change its size. So let's imagine our weapon will be around here. If we want to make damage in front of us, that would be okay, and maybe we can also change. Well, it's a circle, but that doesn't mean anything when I'm doing. but if it was a rectangle, I'd be able, to change the height too. I can also apply an offset depending on my attachment position. By default, I think it's something like 1, and I can also put it a bit higher. So yeah, let's say I'm satisfied with my weapon. So now what I can do is drag this weapon into my project folder here, so as to create a prefab. I can then remove it from the scene. I can then select my rectangle and drag this into its initial weapon slot. So if I press play, I'm equipping my weapon. It's flipping according to what I want. I could have it in front of me, obviously, by just changing its order in layer here, so to something like 10 maybe. I could tweak its positioning and so on, but we won't bother with that for this tutorial. And then if I select my damage area and if I press the attack button, I see that my damage area appears in front of me, and as I've set a relatively low delay between uses, I can press it a lot, but if I change it to something like delay time between uses to 1, if I select it again and try to attack, you'll see that I'm pressing the button continually here, well, repeatedly, and we have a delay between uses. And to show you that this works, one good demonstration would be to bring destructible block inside. Oh, sorry there, little fella. So this block has a health script of with a health of 30. Our weapon, I lost my weapon here. Oh, I grabbed the jetpack flames emitter. Let's start again. Grab the rocket launcher, the jetpack. So I'll try not to grab the rocket launcher this time. Alright. So our box here has a health of 30. Our weapon here does 10 damage, so I should be able to destroy the box in 3 hits. So 1, 2, and 3. There you have it. You've created a melee weapon. You could, of course, improve it, adding animations. You could improve it by positioning it better, making it swing, and so on. But these were the specifics of the Corgi engine. Alright, in addition to that, there are a few things you need to know about weapons. The delay before use and delay between uses are really critical. That's where you will be able to set up your timing for your animations. So let's say you have maybe a cowboy who's having a gun in his holster, and you want him to be able to grab it and then pull the gun out of the holster, aim and shoot. This initial animation will maybe take 1 second. So you can put 1 into the delay before use, and you can change also the delay, the time between uses. So let's put 1, 2 there, and let's shoot. So I need to restart my level. So I'm gonna shoot now, and as you can see, it has waited for 1 second before shooting the first bullet, and now I've got my finger pressing the shooting key, and it's only shooting every 1 second. Obviously you can change that to have, for example, a really small time between uses, which will have some funny result, because usually it will create this kind of laser pattern, or really shoot 'em up pattern. One funny thing I didn't mention is that the asset is using, let's focus on that. It's using an object pool, and object pools are a way that the system has to reuse stuff, recycle things as they are being used and not used. So if I shoot continually, you'll see that I've got a lot of bullets coming out, but it's only these 20 something bullets that are being used and recycled, and if I shoot in the other direction, as there's much more distance, there are much more bullets being activated as I need them. So it's really a way to save performance and have something that really adapts to every situation. In addition to that, we also have a weapon aim component. The weapon aim component is what allows your weapon to aim. Well, it allows you to aim your weapon, so you can decide to have control off or based on the primary movement, so that's your main direction source, so it can be the arrow keys on your keyboard or your left stick on your gamepad. We also have support for the secondary movement. Right now it's bound to your right hand joystick on your gamepad, and we also have the mouse, which can be a fun way to control a gun. So as you can see here, it's following my mouse, and if I press the left button key, I've got, you know, a way to control my gun using the mouse. I can also decide to draw a reticle, so I can grab any object and put it here. It will be a reticle. The reticle is this kind of crosshair that you see here. Set back to primary movement. I could change it. I could decide not to display it, or I could decide to display it but much further. So for example here, it's now at 6 point something units from my weapon. I can decide also to not rotate it. For example, if I go there, as you can see, it's kind of not rotating anymore. And you can have it replace the mouse pointer. So if you set up your aim control based on your mouse, if I drag my thing here, as you can see, it's not oh, I unchecked it. If I press play, as you can see, that's my mouse pointer here, and the reticle replaces it. Then what you can have also is a weapon laser sight. So the way it works is that it draws, I'm gonna bring it back to my main screen, it draws some sort of laser on top of things, and that way, as you can see, the laser is stopped by platforms, but you can decide for it to be stopped by something else, and it's just you know, a nice gadget that is there. You can set what it collides with, so by default you'd set platforms, and you say maybe enemies. You can change its width, you can change its material. It's really a fun gadget to play with. Alright, that covers pretty much everything you need to know to create your own weapons and to use the ones already included in the asset. I hope you learned something new today. Talk to you next time, bye.